She stared at the number, frowned, then checked it again. It didn't make sense. Her blood sugar had finally dropped, but she hadn't changed her main meals. Same rice, same soups, same routine. The only thing she adjusted, fruit. There's this belief most of us grew up with. If it's fruit, it's safe. If it's natural, it can't be the problem. But during my clinical posting, I started noticing something strange. Two patients could be doing almost everything right, yet one would still struggle with unstable blood sugar. And when we looked closely, the difference often came down to something people rarely question, not just what fruit they were eating, but how they were eating it. So in this video, we're going to break this down simply. No extreme rules, no fear. Just understanding why fruit can affect people differently, the small habits that make a big difference, and how to enjoy fruit without unknowingly working against your body. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Kemi. Kemi is in her early 40s, lives in Ibadan, and like many people trying to stay healthy, she made some smart changes. She reduced sugary drinks, started walking in the evenings, and cut down on processed snacks. And one thing she increased? Fruit, because in her mind, that was the safest option. Her routine looked something like this: fruit juice in the morning, fresh, homemade, a big smoothie in the afternoon. Sometimes fruit at night when she didn't feel like eating heavy food. If anything, it looked like she was doing better than most people. But her readings still inconsistent. Some mornings were fine, other confusing. And that's where the frustration started. Now here's where things get interesting. Fruit contains natural sugar, mainly fructose. And unlike glucose, which goes straight into your bloodstream, fructose is processed mainly in the liver. That's not a bad thing. In fact, when fruit is eaten in its natural form, with its fiber still intact, the body usually handles it quite well. The fiber slows everything down. It helps your system absorb sugar gradually instead of all at once. But remove that fiber or overwhelm your system with too much at once, and the story starts to change. Because now, instead of a slow, steady process, your body is dealing with a faster, heavier load than it's comfortable with. And that can show up as spikes, dips, or unstable readings later on. So when Kemi looked at her habits again, something became clear. It wasn't that fruit was the problem, it was how she was consuming it. Think about this for a second. A glass of fruit juice might contain the sugar of 3 or 4 fruits, but without the fiber that would normally slow things down. A smoothie sounds healthy, and it can be, but when fruits are blended in large quantities, it becomes very easy to consume more than your body actually needs at once. And eating fruit when you're extremely hungry, that's when your body absorbs sugar the fastest. So, what looked like clean eating on the outside was quietly overwhelming her system on the inside. And here's the part most people don't expect: she didn't need to stop eating fruit. She didn't need a strict or complicated diet. She just needed to make a few small adjustments that completely changed how her body responded. In the next part, I'll show you the types of fruits that are easier to overdo, the ones that tend to work better for blood sugar balance, and the simple shift that made the biggest difference for her. Because once you understand this, you'll never look at fruit the same way again. She didn't stop eating fruit. That was the surprising part. Instead, she started paying attention to which ones were easier to overdo and which ones her body seemed to handle better, because not all fruits behave the same way once they're inside your body. Some are very easy to eat in large amounts without even realizing it. Think about fruits that are very sweet or have a lot of water content. They go down quickly, they don't feel heavy, and before you know it, you've had more than your body actually needs at that moment. That doesn't make them bad, it just makes them easy to overconsume. And when that happens, your body has to deal with a larger sugar load all at once. Kemi realized this was happening more often than she thought, especially on days when she felt like she was just eating light. Now, on the other hand, there are fruits that tend to slow things down a bit, not because they're magic, but because of how they're built. Some fruits contain more fiber, especially a type called pectin, which forms a kind of gel like texture during digestion that slows how quickly sugar is absorbed into the bloodstream. Others, especially when slightly less ripe, contain resistant starch. This takes longer to break down, which can lead to a more gradual release of sugar. So instead of a sharp spike, you get something more stable. That was a big shift for her. She stopped looking at fruit as just healthy or unhealthy and started seeing it as something that needed a bit of structure. But here's where things got even more interesting. There was one small change that made a noticeable difference. Not overnight, not instantly, but consistently. She stopped eating fruit by itself. That was it. Instead of grabbing fruit when she was very hungry, she started eating it after her main meals, after protein, after something more filling. And what that did was simple but powerful. It slowed everything down. The presence of protein and other nutrients meant the sugar from the fruit didn't hit her system all at once. It was absorbed more gradually. And over time, her reading started to feel less unpredictable. Not perfect, but more stable than before. She also reduced her portions, not in an extreme way, just more intentional. Instead of a large bowl or multiple servings at once, she kept it moderate. And for the first time, it felt like her efforts were actually matching her results. There's also something else worth mentioning. Some fruits contain natural compounds that may support how the body responds to sugar. These compounds can influence processes like AMP activated protein kinase, which plays a role in how cells use energy. But this doesn't mean one fruit is a solution on its own. It just means that when combined with good habits, some choices may work more in your favor than others. And that's an important distinction because it shifts the focus away from finding the perfect fruit to building a pattern your body can respond to better. By this point, Kemi wasn't trying to follow strict rules anymore. She was just paying attention, adjusting, learning what worked for her. And that's when things started to feel different. Not dramatic, but steady. And sometimes that's exactly what progress looks like. Now, here's the part where most people realize they've been making at least one mistake without knowing. Because the truth is, it's usually not one big thing, it's small habits that add up over time. And in the next part, we're going to go through some of the most common ones, the kind that seem harmless but can quietly affect how your body responds. Because once you spot them, they're actually very easy to fix. She started noticing something else too. It wasn't just what she was eating, it was how often she was doing it without thinking. Like fruit juice in the morning, it felt harmless, even better than soft drinks. But juice is where fruit changes completely, because once you remove the fiber, you're left with a fast concentrated form of sugar that enters the system much quicker than whole fruit. And when that happens repeatedly, especially at the start of the day, it can set a very unstable pattern for the rest of the day. Then there was another habit. Smoothies. On the surface, smoothies look healthy. They feel like something you should be doing. But when multiple fruits are blended together, especially in large quantities, it becomes very easy to consume far more than you would normally eat in whole form, and the body doesn't always respond to that kindly. It's not about fear, it's about load. How much your system is processing at once. She also realized something she never paid attention to before, eating fruit when she was extremely hungry. Those moments where she skipped meals or delayed eating, then reached for fruit because it was quick and light. But in those moments, her body was primed to absorb energy quickly. So the sugar from the fruit didn't enter gradually, it entered fast. And that's where the spikes often happened without her realizing the cause. The more she observed, the clearer it became. It wasn't fruit itself causing confusion, it was the pattern around it. So she made a few simple adjustments, nothing extreme, no elimination, just structure. She stopped drinking fruit juice regularly and switched back to a whole fruit when she wanted it. She reduced how often she blended multiple fruits together, and when she did, she made sure it was in smaller portions. And most importantly, she stopped using fruit as a standalone meal replacement. when she was very hungry. Instead, she paired it with actual meals, something with protein, something more filling. Because when fruit is eaten alongside other foods, the overall digestion process slows down. There's more balance, less sudden impact. She also became more intentional with timing, not eating fruit late at night when her body was already winding down. Instead, she kept it earlier in the day or after meals when her system was more prepared to handle it. Over time, these changes didn't feel like restrictions, they felt like adjustments, small ones, but consistent. And that consistency mattered more than anything else. Her readings didn't suddenly become perfect. That's not how real life changes usually work, but they became more predictable, less confusing, less random, and that alone reduced a lot of stress. Because when you're managing something like blood sugar, unpredictability is often the hardest part. Now, stepping back from her story, there's something important to understand. Most people don't struggle because they're eating bad food. They struggle because of patterns they never questioned, like drinking fruit instead of eating it, combining too many fruits at once, or eating fruit without thinking about what came before it. And these are the kinds of habits that are easy to overlook because they don't feel wrong in the moment, but over time they add up. The good thing is, they're also very easy to correct once you're aware of them. You don't need complicated rules, you don't need extreme diets, you just need awareness of timing, portion, and combination. And that's really what this whole story comes down to. Not fear of fruit, but understanding how your body responds to it in different situations. And once that understanding clicks, everything becomes simpler. You stop guessing, you stop overcorrecting, and you start making choices that actually support your routine instead of confusing it. In the final part, I'll bring everything together into a simple daily approach you can actually follow without stress. Something realistic, flexible, and easy to maintain in everyday life. By the time she simplified things, Kemi realized something important. She wasn't actually bad at managing her diet. She was just never taught how small details like timing and combination could change the way her body responds. So instead of trying to follow strict rules, she built something much simpler. She created a pattern she could actually live with. In the morning, she stopped starting her day with fruits alone. If she wanted it, she had it after a proper meal. During the day, she kept portions small and realistic, not oversized bowls or multiple servings at once. And in the evening, she reduced fruit intake altogether, focusing more on balanced meals that kept her full longer. It wasn't restrictive, it was structured, and that structure made things easier to manage. There's also a broader lesson here that goes beyond just one person. A lot of people think managing blood sugar is about removing everything enjoyable or switching to extreme diets. But in reality, it's often about refining everyday habits, the kind of habits that don't feel like they matter at first, like what you pair together, when you eat something, and how much you have in one sitting. Even something as simple as fruit can behave differently depending on those factors, which is why understanding context matters more than labeling foods as good or bad, because food doesn't act in isolation. Your body processes it based on the full picture of what's happening at that moment. And once you understand that, you start making calmer decisions, less confusion, less guessing, more awareness. Kemi didn't become perfect with her eating, but she became more consistent. And that consistency is what helped her feel more in control over time. Not because she found a magic fruit or a special trick, but because she stopped treating all fruit the same in every situation. So if there's one takeaway from all of this, it's this. It's not just about what you eat. It's also about how, when, and what you combine it with. And those small adjustments, when done consistently, can change the way your body responds over time. Now, I'm curious, have you ever noticed a difference in how your body reacts depending on how you eat certain foods or fruits? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to hear your experience. And if you found this helpful, you can follow Diagnosis Diaries for more simple breakdowns of everyday health topics.